Boom, 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 Mr. Stevie's Tall Toy Tales. Hello there. Look how hairy I'm getting. Not bad. Have to start practicing my Obi-Wan Kenobi, won't I? Anyway, episode 9. We've just gone through Star Wars, right? And I asked you, hey, what do you want to look at next? And you voted for Adventure People, which is perfect because the Adventure People and Kenner Star Wars are inextricably linked, which we'll investigate in a little bit. But I know a lot of people think, Kenner Star Wars. They were the ones that invented that magic scale 3.75. Well, I got news for you. But before we get into Adventure People, let me take you on a lightning fast tour history lesson of 3.75. Hold on to your hats. This is going to be quick. 1964, Hasbro released G.I. Joe 12-inch military action figure, the first toy that coined the phrase, and it is a huge success. In 1970, Japanese firm Takara take on the license for Hasbro's G.I. Joe and introduce it to Japan. Huge failure. In 1972, Takara takes the old G.I. Joe molds and reintroduces a new toy line called Henshin Cyborg, which is a translucent cyborg robot guy with foil things inserted and a load of weird stuff all over the place. Really, really strange. Really successful. But hold everything. Oil crisis, early 70s. The price of oil, therefore the price of plastic, rockets, and Henshin Cyborg, 12 inches, remember, is too expensive to make. What do? So in 1973, in reaction to the oil crisis and the rocketing prices, Takara took that 12-inch to get Henshin Cyborg and shrunk it down, keeping the concept pretty much the same, but in a lot smaller and a lot cheaper new concept called Microman. This new smaller scale allowed for use with play sets and vehicles and essentially created a whole world of play. The new scale in 1973, what size was it? Yes, 3.75, a good 4 years prior to Kenner releasing Star Wars. But the new wondrous 3.75-inch action figure Microman was only available in Japan through Takara. How did the rest of the world get this scale? Well, in 1976, Mego took on the rights from Takara and they reintroduced the line to the West, renamed Micronauts. So Microman was the first 3.75-inch figure ever introduced to the toy industry, right? Yes. And therefore 1976's Mego Micronauts was the first 3.75-inch to be introduced to the US, right? No. In fact, the first 3.75-inch figure line was introduced to the West in 1975. Fisher-Price, that well-renowned company for making preschool toys, wanted to expand its demographic to, that's difficult to say, its demographic to a slightly older child and introduce the world to the Adventure People. And that is what this episode is all about, looking at my collection and my memories of Adventure People and also its undeniable influence on the action figure world that we know and love today. So without further ado, let's adventure, people. Woo-wee!
Fisher-Price presents
The Adventure People.
toys for your older kids. There's the Northwoods Trailblazer, ready for his adventures. Or the Daredevil Skydiver, to go as high as a child can toss him. And the TV Action Team, to play with on its own, or with any of our 13 other Adventure People toys. Adventure People and their TV Action Team comes complete as shown. Other sets sold separately by Fisher-Price.
Adventure People's first sets, Rescue Truck, Safari, Rescue Copter and Daredevil Sports Plane, focused on real-life adventurers and emergency workers. In late 1979, early 80, they introduced a new sci-fi theme, starting with the Alpha Probe electronic shuttle and expanded that out into aliens and robots and other galactic offerings. No doubt a reaction to the juggernaut that was Kenner's Star Wars line. Up until now, Adventure People had always been a playset toy line, but in 1983 they introduced individually carded figures. The first one being one of the rarest Adventure People figures, Opticon. Another super rare individually carded figure from the space range is Brainioid, which features a unique exposed brain visible through a really cool clear helmet, often fetches $50, $60 on the secondary market. There are a couple of rare figures to keep an eye out for that came with the sets. There is Safari Dad, who usually comes with short sleeves, but can be found rarely with long sleeves. And then there's also the pilot from the stunt plane that comes with long sleeves and sometimes can be found with short sleeve, which is the rarer variant. Now, I was lucky enough to pick up a box full of Adventure People off eBay, sold actually to me from a son of someone that used to work at Fisher-Price. They're up in their attic. And that makes up a lot of my collection, some of which I've just got in boxes and some of which I've got displayed on my memory shelf. So let's start there. So here is my Adventure People memory shelf. This is full of the Adventure People sets and figures that I really remember and resonated with as a kid. They aren't all necessarily from the same sets because I can't remember what I got or when I got it. They all kind of like went into one big toy box, right? I remember being fascinated by the diver and how he could be submerged in the bath, stay afloat at the top with a little float, but then sink down. The octopus, anything kind of gooey and kind of fiddly was good for me. I remember the tent. I used to take this outside with all my figures and there was a little sleeping bag in there. And I remember putting it up into the garden and going out on camps with my figures. Obviously, if I was going camping, I'd have to take a Jeep with me. This is my favorite one. Again, remember, I love orange, so this is really cool. And the canoe, which floated in the bath, which went above this guy. Here's my Lassie dog. This is one of my favorites. I love this dog, and I love Lassie. Do you remember Lassie? I used to watch it on Saturday mornings after Superman, if I remember, with George Reeves, the black and white one. So I used to love that. Most important to me, out of all the Adventure People sets, was by far the Sea Explorer. Let's get it out and have a closer look. The first thing to love about this set is that sound. My goodness, that takes me back to being like 6 years old. The second thing, this thing floats. I spent a lot of time in the bath. I clearly was a dirty little boy. And whenever I got in the bath, I took in my Sea Explorer. I also used to love sticking my face through here and looking under the bubbles. Now, of course, it was built for these people to go in it so they could explore the depths of the ocean. But I like to share in the adventures. Now, I was lucky enough to get all the accessories with this find. So we've got the diving mask and air tank. If you look in here, got super handy storage for your water skis. And whatever you call this, the water ski rope thing, handle thing. But the single most favoritist element of the Sea Explorer set has to be the dolphin. Now, I want you to bear in mind, this dolphin here, 1976, flipping heck, that's 48 years old. And apart from a little bit of colouring there and a little bit of leaching, that is in good condition, which would be nothing like my dolphin because I spent most of my time chewing it and it had a load of teeth marks and it was all scraped off. Now, if I was to live up to childhood, I'd give this a damn good chew. But I can't bring myself. I mean, look at him. He's perfect. Yeah, I know, love you too. The big question for me remains, how did Takara and Fisher-Price, seemingly independently, both come up with 3.75 as their scale? Now, there's an urban myth that suggests if you go, I need an action figure about yay big, that yay big is, guess what, 3.75. Not sure. Was Fisher-Price at the inaugural Hong Kong Toy Fair in 1974, happy 50th birthday, and they saw Takara's Microman and thought, that's a great scale. The internet wasn't around in those days, so gathering information was a lot more difficult. Maybe the Fisher-Price designers were out in Japan just looking at toys and they just saw it and thought, that's cool. I'm not sure, but something happened around that sort of early to mid 70s. Because it all works out. Toy lines are about a year and a half, 2 years to bring to fruition. Something somewhere inspired someone, which is common, which always happens. One thing I do know is that Adventure People inspired and assisted another toy company, Kenner, in getting the Star Wars license. How, you ask? Let me tell you. Now, I've read about this in many books. I've also heard it firsthand from Mark Boudreau, who was on the Star Wars team when I led it 10 years ago. Mark actually worked for Kenner and for Hasbro for 40 plus years. Sadly, we lost Mark last year, but he was there in 76, 77 as a Kenner intern when Lucasfilm was going out to various toy companies and pitching the idea of Star Wars. Now, something about that pitch, which involved a VHS video of dogfights and crappy put together cutscenes, inspired the Kenner leadership and the Kenner designers, and they said, yes, we are in. So the next step from there would be to create a set of prototypes and to create a vision for what the toy line was going to be. But funnily enough, there was not much time to do that. So what did they do? Yeah, they grabbed a load of adventure people, added some Sculpey, painted it up, stuck little things like laser swords in their hands, and went back to Lucasfilm and said, hey, we want to make it small, about this scale, because it's important to get vehicles and playsets in the play world as well. What do you reckon? And the rest is history. So what is it about adventure people that I love? Well, they are tough, well made. They are ingenious. And can we just talk about the color palette before we go? There is something irresistible about the way that they treat their reds, which aren't bright red, the blues, which has like a duck egg retro feel, and the yellows aren't big, bright banana yellow. They're sort of slightly got like a little bit of red in there, and they just look nice. They're well designed, they're well thought out. They are just a really, really good, great toy. And that is good enough for me. Join me next week on Mr. Stevie's Tall Toy Tales, where we'll be talking about, I actually haven't made up my mind yet, but it'll be episode 10. So we'll be big boys, double figures. But rest assured, we won't be growing up too fast. And whatever it is, will be fast and funny and all about toys, just as you like it. So bugger off, have a great week, and I'll see you again soon.